welcome to this week's Language Arts lesson. Go ahead and please get out your Language Arts notebooks, turn to a clean sheet, name today's date. Let's go and review our objective today. I can explain the significance of specific lines and events in Animal Farm and what they reveal about characters and the plot. Today, we're going to be reading Chapter 9 of Animal Farm, and I want you to answer the following in a Google Doc. Number 1, what was the one ambition in life for Boxer? Number 2, what term does Squealer use instead of reduction of rations? And number 3, what was the special privilege given to pigs on Sunday? Join me now as we'll be reading Chapter 9 of Animal Farm. Chapter 9. Boxer's split hoof was a long time in healing. They had started the rebuilding of the windmill the day after the victory celebration were ended. Boxer refused to take even a day off of work, and made it a point of honor not to let it seem that he was in pain. In the evenings, he would admit privately to Clover that the hoof troubled him a great deal. Clover treated the hoof with pulchers of herbs, which she prepared by chewing them, and both she and Benjamin urged Boxer to work less hard. A horse's lungs do not last forever, she said to him, but Boxer would not listen. He said he said only one real ambition in life, to see the windmill well underway before he reached the age for retirement. At the beginning, when the laws of Animal Farm were first formulated, the retiring age had been fixed for horses and pigs at 12, and for cows at 14, for dogs at 9, and for sheep at 7, and for hens and geese at 5. Liberal old age pensions had been agreed upon, and yet no animal had actually retired on pension. But of late, the subject had been discussed more and more. Now that the small field beyond the orchard had been set aside for barley, it was rumored that a corner of a large pasture was to be set off and turned into a grazing ground for superannuated animals. For a horse, it was said, the pension would be 5 pounds of corn a day, and in winter, 15 pounds of hay, with a carrot or possibly an apple on public holidays. Boxer's 12th birthday was due in the late summer the following year. Meanwhile, life was hard. The winter was cold, and the last one had been, and food was even shorter. Once again, all rations were reduced, except for those of the pigs and the dogs. A too rigid equality in rations, Squealer explained, would have to be contrary to the principles of animalism. In any case, he had no difficulty in proving to the other animals that they were not in reality short of food, whatever the appearances might be. For the time being, certainly, it had been found necessary to make a readjustment of rations. Squealer always spoke of it as a readjustment and never a reduction. But in comparison with the days of Jones, the improvement was enormous. Reading out the figures in a shrill, rapid voice, he proved to them in detail that he had more oats, more hay, and more turnips than they had had in Jones's day, and that they worked shorter hours, and that their drinking water was of better quality, and that they lived longer, that their larger portions of the young ones survived infancy, and that they had more straw in their stalls and suffered less from fleas. The animals believed every word of it. Truth to tell, Jones and all he stood for had almost faded out of their memories. They knew that life nowadays was harsh and bare, and that they were often hungry and often cold, and that they were usually workers when they were not asleep. But doubtless it had been worse in old days. They were glad to believe so. Besides, in those days they had been slaves, and now they were free. And that made all the difference, and Squealer did not fail to point out. There were many more mouths to feed now. In the autumn, the 4 sows had all littered about simultaneously, producing 31 young pigs between them. The young pigs were piebald, and as Napoleon was the only boar on the farm, it was possible to guess at their parentage. It was announced that the time being, the young pigs were given the instruction by Napoleon himself in the farmhouse kitchen. They took their exercise in the garden and was discouraged from playing with other young animals. About this time, too, it had been laid down as a rule that when a pig or any other animal met on a path, the other animal must stand aside, and also that all pigs of whatever decree were to have the privilege of wearing green ribbons on their tails on Sundays. The farm had a fairly successful year, but were still short of money. There were the brick, sand, and lime for the schoolroom to be purchased, and it was also necessary to begin saving up again for the machinery for the windmill. Then there was lamp oil and candles for the house, sugar for Napoleon's own table. He forbade this to the other pigs on the ground that it made them fat, and all the unusual replacements such as tools, nails, string, coal, wire, scrap, and dog biscuits. A stump of hay and a part of a potato crop were sold off, and a contract for eggs was increased to 600 a week, so that year the hens barely hatched enough chicks to keep their numbers at the same level. Rations reduced in December were reduced again in February, and lanterns in the stall were forbidden to save oil. But the pigs seemed comfortable enough, and in fact they were putting on weight, if anything. One afternoon in late February, a warm, rich, appeasing scent such as the animals had never smelt before wafted itself across the yard from the little brew house which had been discussed in Jones's time, and which stood beyond the kitchen. Someone said it smelled of cooking barley. The animals sniffed the air hungrily and wondered whether a warm mash was being prepared for them for supper. But no mash was appeared, and on the following Sunday it was announced that from now onwards all barley would be reserved for the pigs. The field beyond the orchard had already been sown with barley, and news soon leaked that every pig was now receiving a ration of a pint of beer daily, with a half-gallon for Napoleon himself, which was always served to him in the Crown Derby soup turn. It was as if there were hardships to be borne. They was partly offset by the fact that life nowadays had a greater dignity than it had done before. There were more songs, more speeches, and more processions. Napoleon had commanded that once a week there should be held something called a spontaneous demonstration, the object of which was to celebrate the struggles and triumphs of Animal Farm. At the appointed time, the animals would leave their work and march round the precincts of the farm in military formations, with the pigs leading, and the horses and cows and the sheep and then the poultry. The dogs flanked the procession, and at the head of all marched Napoleon's black cockerel. Boxer and Clover had always carried between them a green banner marked with a hoof and a horn the caption, "Long live Comrade Napoleon." Afterwards there were recitations of poems composed in Napoleon's honor, and a speech by Squealer giving particular in the latest increases in production of foodstuffs. On the occasion a shot was fired from the gun. The sheep were the greatest devotees of the spontaneous demonstrations, and if anyone complained, as if a few animals ever did, when no pigs or dogs were near, that they wasted no time and meant a lot of standing about in a cold, and the sheep were sure to silence him in a tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. But by the large animals enjoyed their celebrations. They found it comforting to be reminded that, after all, they were truly their own masters, and they did work, and the work they did was for their own benefit. So that what with their songs for the procession, Squealer's lists of figures, the thunder of a gun, the crowing of the cockerel, and the fluttering of the flag, they were able to forget that their bellies were empty, at least part of the time. In April, Animal Farm now proclaimed a republic, and it became necessary to elect a president. There was only one candidate, Napoleon, who was elected unanimously. On the same day it was given out that fresh documents had been discovered which revealed further details about Snowball's complicity with Jones. It now appeared that Snowball had not, as the annals previously imagined, merely attempted to lose the Battle of Cowshed by means of a strategy, but had been openly fighting on Jones's side. In fact, it was he who had been on the leader of the human forces. He had charged in the battle with the words, "Long live humanity," on his lips. The words on Snowball's back, which were few of the animals still remembered to have seen, had been inflicted by Napoleon's teeth. In the middle of summer, Moses the raven suddenly reappeared in the farm after the absence of several years. He was quite unchanged, still did no work, and talked the same strain as ever about Sugar Candy Mountain. He would perch on a stump, flap his black wings, and talk by the hour to anyone who would listen. "Up there, comrades," he would say, solemnly pointing to the sky with his large beak. "Up there, just on the other side of the dark cloud, you can see, there it lies, Sugar Cane Mountain, the happy country where we poor animals shall rest forever for our labors." He even claimed to have been there on his own higher flights, and to have seen everlasting fields of clover and linseed cake and lump sugar growing on the hedges. Many of the animals believed him. Their lives now, they seemed, were hungry and laborious. Was it not right and just a better world should exist somewhere else? A thing that was difficult to determine was the attitude of the pigs towards Moses. They all declared contemptuously that his stories about Sugarcane Mountain were lies, and yet they allowed him to remain on the farm, not working, with an allowance of a grill of beer a day. After his hoof had been healed up, Boxer worked harder than ever. Indeed, all the animals worked like slaves that year. Apart from regular work on the farm or building the windmill, there was the schoolhouse for the young pigs, which was started in March. Sometimes the long hours on insufficient food were hard to bear, but Boxer never faltered. In nothing that he said or did there were any signs of his strength was not what it had been. It was only the appearance that was a little altered. His hide was less shiny than it used to be, and his great haunches seemed to have shrunken. The others said Boxer will pick up when the spring grass comes on, but the spring came and Boxer grew no fatter. Sometimes on the slope leading to the top of the quarry, where he braced his muscles against the weight of some vast boulder, it seemed that nothing kept him on his feet except the will to continue. At such times his lips were seen to form the words, "I will work harder." He had no voice left. Once again Clover and Benjamin warned him to take care of his health, but Boxer paid no attention. His 12th birthday was approaching. He did not care what happened so long as a good store of stone was accumulated before he went on pension. Late one evening in the summer, a sudden rumor ran around the farm that something had happened to Boxer. He had gone out alone to drag a load of stone down the windmill, and sure enough, the rumor was true. A few minutes later, two pigeons came racing with the news. Boxer had fallen. He is lying on his side and can't get up. About half of the animals on the farm rushed out to the knoll where the windmill stood. There lay Boxer between the shafts of the cart, his neck stretched out, unable to raise his head. His eyes were glazed, his sides matted with sweat. A thin stream of blood had trickled out of his mouth. Clover dropped to his knees and to his side. "Boxer," she cried, "how are you?" "It is my lungs," said Boxer in a weak voice. "It does not matter. I think you'll be able to finish the windmill without me. There is a pretty good store of stone accumulated. I had only another month to go in my case. To tell the truth, I was looking forward to my retirement, and perhaps, as Benjamin is growing old too, they will let him retire at the same time to be a companion to me." "We must get you help at once," said Clover. "Run, someone, and tell Squealer what had happened." One of the other animals immediately raced down the farmhouse to give Squealer the news. Only Clover remained. Benjamin, who lay down on Boxer's side and without speaking kept the flies off him with his long tail. After about a quarter of an hour, Squealer appeared, full of sympathy and concern. He said that Comrade Napoleon, who had learned with this very deepest distress of this misfortune to the most loyal workers on the farm, was already making arrangements to send Boxer to be treated in the hospital at the Wingington. The animals felt a little uneasy at this. Except for Molly and Snowball, no other animal had ever left the farm, and they did not think of their sick comrade in the hands of human beings. However, Squealer easily convinced them that the veterinary surgeon in Willingdon could treat Boxer's case more satisfactory than could be done on the farm. And about half an hour later, when Boxer had somewhat recovered, he had difficulty getting onto his feet and managed to limp back to the stall, where Clover and Benjamin prepared a good bed of straw for him. The next 2 days, Boxer remained in the stall, and the pigs had set out a large bottle of pink medicine, which they found in the medicine chest in the bathroom. And Clover administered it to Boxer twice a day after meals. In the evening, she lay in his stall and talked with him, while Benjamin kept flies off of him. Boxer professed not to be sorry for what had happened. If he made a good recovery, he might expect to live another 3 years, and he looked forward to his peaceful days that he would spend in the corner of the big pasture. It would be the first time he had had leisure to study and improve his mind. He intended, he said, to devote the rest of his life to learning the remaining 22 letters of the alphabet. However, Benjamin and Clover had only been with Boxer after working hours, and it was in the middle of the day when the van came to take him away. The animals were all working, weeding turnips under the supervision of a pig, when they were astonished to see Benjamin come galloping from the direction of the farm building, braying at the top of his voice. It was the first time that they had seen Benjamin excited indeed. It was the first time they'd seen anyone in a gallop. "Quick, quick," he shouted, "come quick! They're taking Boxer away!" Without waiting for orders from the pigs, the animals broke off and worked and raced to the farm building. Sure enough, In the yard was the large closed van, drawn by 2 horses, and lettering on the side, a sly-looking man in a low-crowned bowler hat sitting on the driver's seat. All Boxer's stall was empty. The animals crowded around the van. "Goodbye, Boxer," they chorused. "Goodbye." "Fools! Fools!" shouted Benjamin, prancing around them and stamping the earth with his small hoofs. "Fools! Don't you see what's written on the side of the van?" They gave the animal pause, and there was a harsh. Muriel began to spell the words, but Benjamin pushed her aside. In the midst of a deadly silence they read, "Alfred Simmons, horse slaughter and glue boiler, Wilmington. Dealer in hides and bone meal. Kennel supplied. Don't you understand what that means? They're taking Boxer to the Knackrels." A cry of horror burst from all the animals, and at this moment the man on the box whipped up his horses, and the van moved out of the yard in a small trot. All the animals followed, crying at the top of their voices. Clover forced her way to the front. The van then began to gallop speed. Clover cried to stir her stout limbs to a gallop and achieve a canter. "Boxer!" she cried. "Boxer! Boxer!" At this moment, although he had heard the uproar outside, Boxer's face, with the white stripe down his nose, appeared at the small window in the back of the van. "Boxer!" cried Clover in a terrible voice. "Boxer, get out! Come quickly! They're taking you to death!" All of the animals took up the cry of "Get out, Boxer, get out!" But the van was already gathering speed and drawing away from them. In the uncertain weather, Boxer understood what Clover had said, but a moment later his face disappeared from the window, and there was the sound of tremendous drumming of hooves inside the van. He was trying to kick his way out. The time had been when a few kicks from Boxer's hooves had smashed the van to matchwood, but alas, his strength had left him, and in the last few moments the sound of drumming hooves grew fainter and died away. In desperation, the animals had been appearing the 2 horses who drew the van to stop. "Comrades, comrades," they shouted, "don't take your own brother to his death." But the stupid horses, too ignorant to realize what had happened, merely set back their ears and quickened their pace. Boxer's face did not reappear in the window. Too late, someone thought of racing ahead and shuttering the 5-barred gate. But in another moment the van was through it and had rapidly disappeared down the road. Boxer was never seen again. 3 days later, it was announced that he died in the hospital at Wilmington in spite of receiving every attention a horse could have. Squealer came to announce the news to the others. He had, he said, been present during Boxer's late hours. "It was the most affectionate sight I'd ever seen," Squealer said, lifting his trotter and wiping away a tear. "I was at his bedside at the very last, and at the end, almost too weak to speak, he whispered in my ear that this sole sorrow was to have passed on before the windmill had finished. 'Forward, comrades,' he whispered. 'Forward into the name of rebellion. Long live Animal Farm. Long live Comrade Napoleon. Napoleon is always right.' Those were his very last words, comrade." Here Squealer's demeanor suddenly changed. He fell silent for a moment, and his eyes darted suspicious glances from side to side before he proceeded. "It had come to his knowledge," he said, "that a foolish and wicked rumor had been circulating at the time of the Boxer's removal. Some of the animals had noticed that the van which took Boxer away was marked Horse Slaughterer, and had actually jumped to the conclusion that Boxer had been sent away to Knackers. It was almost unbelievable," said Squealer, "to the conclusion that Boxer had been sent away to Knackers. It was, surely he cried indignantly, whisking his tail and skipping from side to side. "Surely he knew that their beloved leader, Comrade Napoleon, better than that." But the explanation was really very simple. The van had previously been the property of the knacker, who had been brought up to be a veterinary surgeon, who had not yet painted the old name out. That was how the mistake had been risen. The animals were enormously relieved of this, and when Squealer went on to further grapple details of Boxer's deathbed, the admirable care he had received, and the expensive medicine from which Napoleon had paid without a thought as to the cost, their last doubts disappeared, and the sorrow that they felt from their comrade's death was tempted by the thought that they at least had died happy. Napoleon himself appeared at the meeting on the following Sunday morning and pronounced a short oration in Boxer's honor. It had not been possible, he said, to bring back their lamented comrade remains for interment on the farm, but he had ordered a large wreath to be made for the laurels in the farmhouse garden and sent down to be placed in Boxer's grave. And in a few days' time, the pigs intended to hold a memorial banquet in Boxer's honor. Napoleon ended his speech with the remainder of Boxer's 2 favorite maxims. "I will work harder, and Comrade Napoleon is always right," maxims, he said, which every animal should well adopt to his own. One day, on the day appointment for the banquet, a grocer van drove up from Wilmington and delivered a large wooden crate to the farmhouse. That night, was the sound of the uproarious singing, which was followed by the sound of a violent quarrel and ended at around 8 o'clock with a tremendous crash of a glass. No one stirred in the farmhouse before noon the following day, and word went round that from somewhere or other the pigs had acquired the money to buy themselves another case of whiskey. And that concludes Chapter 9 of Animal Farm. Once again, in a Google Doc, please answer the following questions. Number 1, what was the one ambition in life for Boxer? Number 2, what term does Squealer use instead of reduction of rations? And number 3, what was the special privilege given to pigs on Sunday? Remember, class, please make sure your answers are in complete sentences. You will receive points off if your answers are not in complete sentences. Join me next time. We'll be delving into Chapter 10 and the final chapter of Animal Farm. This is Mr. Campbell saying, keep reading, 8th grade.